Good morning, all. I will.
Morning.
Let me check in with Mr. Walker.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Well, for those of us just joining or anyone watching on YouTube, the chairperson of this committee is logging on right now, so we will start shortly.
Good morning, all. Apologies for being a little tardy. Okay, let me get that straight. Let's see.
And while you get situated, I'm screen sharing the agenda. If you'll notice, we kind of broke it up a bit. We do have a principals meeting that the superintendent and a few cabinet members have to get to immediately after. So we're hoping, Mr. Walker, if you allow some some flexibility on the agenda, and actually, I'm going to move Enid up because these Dr. Silver and Chief Avila need to attend the principals meeting as well as the superintendent.
Understood. Good morning and welcome to the Finance and Audit Committee meeting. Pardon my tardiness. I'm Tyrone Walker, Chair of the Finance and Audit Committee. And for those watching in online and YouTube, welcome. So Ms. Santiago, let's talk about then the changes that need to be made to the agenda. What needs to move ahead in the agenda as is currently listed?
Actually, I rearranged it in the way it should be.
Oh, okay.
So it's fine now.
Perfect. Then I believe that we're ready to proceed. Is Chief Penn opening? Is that still going to be the initial presenter?
Superintendent or
Christina, I believe that's Superintendent and I. That's right.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Walker, and good morning, everyone. Christina, I believe on the agenda is the post-secondary investment pathway.
Yeah, there you go.
Great, thank you. And so I will be tagging in Senior Advisor, Mr. Sugarman, and Chief Penn as well, as we talk about the financial sustainability pieces to this. And I know that we had an initial conversation in a committee of the whole, and then there's been also a presentation and additional dialogue in the Family and Community Engagement Committee. And so the post-secondary investment pathway is really focused on boosting attendance and graduation, right? So these are long-term investments that we're making. If we go to the next slide, just quickly, we want to just do an overview of anchoring in our goals, because what we're doing with this strategy is directly connected to our goals. And we want to give an overview of the Hartford Promise, given that this strategy potentially directly connects to Hartford Promise and the phases of the strategy. And then a little bit about financial sustainability. So again, everyone should be familiar with our major goals, right? The first 4 goals here are tied to our academic achievement outcomes. The investment, the program, the strategy that we're discussing today indirectly contribute to those areas, but we want to narrow in on the last 2 that you see listed here. Our 4-year cohort graduation rate, which, as we know, recently increased, and our reduction of chronic absenteeism, which has exacerbated during the pandemic. In the next slide, I'll do a quick overview of how we have maximized and reinvested our surplus. Right, so this is the GB general funding, general budget surplus funding. And so right now you can see across here that we will continue to roll over the 5.6 in our non-lapsing account. You see additional investments that we have made, not only for teachers and all staff, but also to make sure that we did the retroactive pay for some of our bargaining units there, and then additional investments in safety and facilities. Many of these, when it comes to facilities, were identified during our system-wide walkthroughs with school leaders, with school level teams, and with central office team members. So you have everything laid out there with regard to the investments. And the one group, if you will, that we wanted to make sure that we also invested in was, of course, our students. And this is what we're talking about today. I'm going to tag in the next slide, Senior Advisor Sugarman, just to give a quick overview of, Hartford Promise and the connection there. And then the phases, we talked about this before during the committee of the whole, but how we're hoping to allow our students to take advantage, benefit from this opportunity as they progress. And these phases align to our grade level configurations, right? K-5, 6, 8, and 9, 12. So Mr. Sugarman.
Thank you very much, Dr. Torres Rodriguez. If we could advance to the next slide, that would be great. And I'll give a quick overview on Hartford Promise.
I apologize. I switched over to the PowerPoint as I did notice the PDF was getting cut off. I'm showing slide
I
number.
still see the previous screen, Christina.
Right.
Okay, hold up one second. Oh,
Sure.
you know, sorry, I had pause sharing. There you go. Is this? Can you see just the PowerPoint or the one with the?
I see the PowerPoint. If you want to put it into slideshow, I think we would be all set. Perfect.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
No problem.
Good morning, everyone. Just to give an overview of Hartford Promise, and then on the next slide, what you'll see is you'll see the 3 stages, and you'll see how Hartford Promise fits into our post-secondary pathway. Christina, if you could actually go back to the previous slide, I'm sorry. So Hartford Promise is a scholarship and support program. It's been supporting Hartford Public School students since 2016. Since then, there have been over 800 Promise Scholars and over $7 million in scholarship dollars awarded, and also supports and wraparound services that come with that money. Currently, there are 480 Hartford Promise Scholars come from every high school throughout our district. The requirements of a Hartford Promise Scholar: they have to live in Hartford all 4 years of high school. They have to attend a Hartford Public High School all 4 years of high school. And then cumulative throughout their high school career, they have to have a 3.0 or better GPA and 93% or better attendance. That 93%, that equates to about 14 days that they're able to miss per year. And just as a reference, our goal as a district is we want to get to better than 90% attendance for 88% of our students. So that's 12% or lower chronic absenteeism. If you qualify as a Hartford Promise Scholar, you receive up to $20,000 in scholarship to attend any college in the country. $20,000 for 4-year institutions. It's $2,500 a year for 2-year institutions. And there are a lot of matching universities that either offer matched dollar-for-dollar scholarships or offer room and board for Hartford Promise Scholars. Some of the outcomes: over 90 colleges attended across the country. The persistence rate for Hartford Promise Scholars, which is a data point that they keep a close eye on, is 85% first to second year. And the first few classes have approximately a 70% graduation rate. If you compare that to similar populations, it's about 14 to 15 percentage points higher. Some of the recent alum from Hartford Promise are working as teachers at Hartford Public Schools. There's a couple that are working in the mayor's office, many that are attending law or medical school. I think 30% of Hartford Promise Scholars are majoring in something around public health. So that's obviously a talent pool that Hartford Public Schools wants to make sure that we're incorporated in and that we're invested in. But these are really public servants that are going to benefit Hartford at large. And looking at our stages, so Hartford Promise is really the third stage of this. And just to provide some clarity, Hartford Promise is a separate organization. They are a partner of Hartford Public Schools. Hartford Public Schools has invested in Hartford Promise. There is a data sharing agreement. There is intense collaboration. I see that Dr. Daniels is on this call, but there is real collaboration between the two organizations, but they are a separate entity. I just wanted to make sure that that point was clear. The two pieces that we're going to talk about really are going to help to stimulate more Hartford Promise Scholars coming through Hartford Public Schools, but also students that may not be Hartford Promise Scholars. And so I'll explain that now. So K through 5 is what we're calling the launching pad. And we're going to invest $100 per year for every student K through 5 that's a Hartford resident at Hartford Public Schools that exceeds 90% attendance. And that is essentially giving every student that is not chronically absent a $100 investment that will go towards post-secondary after they graduate from a Hartford Public High School. And they would be eligible for this every year that they're enrolled in a Hartford Public School and that they're also a resident. The next phase is what we're calling the early promise. And there's more of a connection here with Hartford Promise, which is why we call it early promise. $500 per year for all 6 through 8 students who exceed 90% attendance every year that they're at a Hartford Public Middle School and that they're a Hartford resident. The one additional criteria for these students is that they have to qualify as a Hartford Promise Scholar. When they qualify as a Hartford Promise Scholar, they could earn up to $1,500 total to be applied towards post-secondary planning. This is just noting some of the criteria for the 2 different pathways. So qualifying students could receive up to $2,100 from Hartford Public Schools that would be invested at the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving. The first criteria, again, better than 90% attendance, Hartford residency, enrolled in a Hartford Public School elementary school, and they have to graduate high school. Those are the criteria for the K through 5 launching pad students. They don't need to start as a kindergarten student. They could start as a 3rd grader. They would be eligible from 3rd grade on, as an example. The 6 through 8 criteria for early promise is the same as it is for the launching pad, with the additional qualifier that you have to be a Hartford Promise Scholar. And students that meet those criteria would receive up to $1,500. Now, this money, when the students graduate from high school, could be used for 4-year school, 2-year trade schools, certification programs. Just has to be used for post-secondary and or career advancement programs. We talked about this in our family committee. I think it's important just to understand how this could play off across a couple of different scenarios. So the first one is Nicole, and again, these are somewhat fictitious profiles, although there are some similarities to actual students. Nicole is started at Hartford Public Schools as a kindergartner. She stayed with Hartford Public Schools for 13 years, graduated as the salutatorian from Weaver High School, always had excellent attendance and was a great student. As the salutatorian, she was highly sought after. She was accepted to the University of Chicago. At the University of Chicago, her scholarship would be matched. Her Promise Scholarship would be matched. Therefore, Nicole would earn approximately $42,100 to go to school. And that's a combination of the early promise, the launching pad, Hartford Promise Scholarship, and then the match from the University of Chicago. The next profile is Victor, moves to Hartford in his 6th grade year. He goes to Burr. He had a tough time in his first year, but 7th and 8th grade, he surpasses 90% attendance, starts getting great grades. After graduating from Buckley, he earns a Promise Scholarship and was accepted to the University of University of Hartford. He would earn $1,000 from Hartford Public Schools because of his early Promise achievements, $20,000 from Hartford Promise, and approximately $8,000 a year for room and board from University of Hartford. They provide a housing stipend for all Hartford Promise Scholars. He would therefore earn the equivalent of $53,000 for his 4-year university. And then the last profile is Simone, born and raised in Hartford, has always wanted to work in healthcare, perfect attendance throughout Hartford Public Schools, did really well in the classroom. She was a part of the allied health pathway at Hartford Public High School, and she knew that she wanted to become a medical assistant. She has great grades, great attendance. She therefore has earned $2,100 from Hartford Public Schools, and she can use that to advancing her medical career, whether she goes to college or not. So the initial investment, and this is where talking about the financial sustainability of the model, is a $2 million investment. Now, what that gets us for the launching pad is K through 5th grade enrolling starting next year. So for the school year 22-23, kindergarten through 5th grade, an investment for those students that will be there when they graduate high school. We base this modeling on 75% of grade level students are Hartford residents. 75% achieving attendance criteria. We are below those numbers right now. We want to be above those numbers. And so the average of 75% was appropriate for modeling purposes. And again, as I mentioned, this extends back to the rising kindergarten class. In addition to that, the early promise modeling includes investments based on 125 qualifying Hartford Promise scholars per year. Because remember, that is the additional criteria that these students have to meet. Right now, Hartford Promise averages between 135 and 145 Promise scholars per year. They do include an additional high school that we would not include in this modeling. So 125 Hartford resident, Hartford Public School Promise scholars is an appropriate modeling tool for this class. And that would extend back to the rising fourth grade class. One note is that this does include a $500 contribution for all rising ninth graders if they attend Summer Bridge, as these students would be right on the edge of essentially missing this additional incentive. And we want to make sure their good work over the summer is recognized. I'll note that today there is actually a meeting with the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving to talk about the financial sustainability piece of this and to talk through the two different investment models that we have, one being a current use fund, the other being an endowed fund, and then determining how long the initial $2 million investment can go and how many classes we would be able to support. And so that conversation is happening shortly after this meeting. And so there would certainly be a follow-up. We could provide a one-pager or more that could provide those details, and I'm sure answer some questions that you have.
Thank you, Mr. Sugarman. Mr. Walker, can I also, before, just add a couple things as well, given that I was reflecting on some of the commentary in the Family and Community Engagement Committee.
Yes.
So I also want to just talk about like the backdrop for all of this. And ultimately what we want to do is make sure that we increase the number of Promise scholars. And so, thinking about the conditions that need to be true for that to happen in the long term, over the years. And so, a system, first of all, rigorous standards aligned curriculum and grade level instruction for our students, the tiered system of supports for students that need additional resources and academic support, the social and emotional supports, the extracurricular activities, the restorative approaches, professional learning for our teachers and for our staff, extended day programming, extended year programming, all of these things that we are now investing in also contribute to this long-term goal that we have. And we want to make sure that these are all happening in parallel. The other thing that I want to also share is that, this is the first part of a larger plan strategy, With this, my hope is to be able to also speak to funders to continue to make investments in this entire pathway. So I just wanted to add that it's a starting point for us.
Thank you, Madam Superintendent. And Mr. Sugarman, thank you for that presentation. Are there questions and comments among board members or other committee members?
I have just a comment, Mr. Walker.
Yes, board member Escribano.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Mr. Sugarman, Dr. Torres Rodriguez, and everyone on the team, just great presentation again. I fully support this. My question, and I brought it up before and we've had conversations, is just the sustainability piece of this. Looking towards how do we make this an ongoing thing, a normal part of our district, I know this is a launching pad. This is the first time we're doing it, about 20 years from now, 15 years from now, how do we make this the norm, And I know you're thinking about that. And I know with Hartford Foundation, you have those conversations and looking at some corporate donations, like from Aetna, Travelers, all of that, to see if they can match these funds. And if Hartford Foundation has some type of interest rate you're getting from by holding the amount there. I don't know how that's looking like or what those conversations are, but just thinking sustainably, how do we maintain this, Thank you, Mr. Walker.
Thank you, Board Member Escribano. I would yield the floor to Chairman Rigor for a question or comment.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Trust everyone had a good weekend. Superintendent Rodriguez, Chief Penn, and Mr. Sugarman, thank you for the presentation. I think from a finance committee perspective, I think what would be helpful for the folks on the line here, as this is being discussed and potentially to be brought to the board meeting, our next board meeting for a vote. Can you talk about the actual kind of logistics and the mechanics of this budget surplus that we have and why the vote is needed, right? So there's some mechanics that needs to take place there, and I want to make sure everyone has line of sight of like how, if this goes forward, how it actually looks and works so that everyone's in line with the approach.
Chief Penn, before you, can we answer the question as to what happens if it doesn't? Because there's an implication there, Chairman Rigger, with regard to the funds and the funds going back to the city. And, then Chief Penn, you can talk about transferring the money and what the foundation, the expectation from what the expectation from the foundation is with regard to a committee that needs to be formed.
Sure. Let me try and take these. And I know Ms. Escribano also had a related question in this, right? So any money in our general fund budget that we do not expend by June 30th will roll back over into the city's general fund. And I think their preferred use of those funds, as I understand them right now, is to have them go into the capital plan as a means of helping to support the school construction projects that are going on right now. With respect to how this would get managed, and one of the reasons we would need a vote is this is an unbudgeted expense. It's fairly large. We want to have board confirmation that we can move the money around to write a $2 million check for Hartford Foundation so that they have the ability to then take it into their asset management account. There would be an asset management agreement that goes with this. And then there would be a steering committee of appointees that would oversee both the investment and how much it is spent each year in support of this program and all those other key decisions that go along with this. Think about it as being trustees to these funds going forward, right? So to answer the question about sustainability, what I've seen so far is two different proposals from Hartford Foundation. One is, as Mr. Sugarman implied, a current use. Current use means that you expect to expend almost as much money as you take in a given year. You're holding the money for a short period of time. You're earning a very nominal rate of interest, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5%, something along those lines. And that's one option. Option two is if you think more of a traditional college or university endowment fund, where you're putting in a pretty significant amount of capital on the go in, and then you are predominantly spending your investment income, your dividends, your interest that you receive on those funds, and using those to pay current period expenses. Now, what they would tell you is that typically you wouldn't want to draw down anything more than the investment income and perhaps 4% of the principal in any given year to make sure you have sustainability. But as I think about this, one of the questions we've asked is what's your internal rate of return projection for these funds going forward? And that'll be a part of this afternoon's conversation so that we know that and can model that out. So in other words, there's a point at which you'll get to, if there's continued fund giving to this approach, where the amount that's held in the endowment and the interest and dividends that throws off in a given year means that the program becomes self-sustaining. What you receive in a given year equals what your outgoing cash is to support the scholarships. And that's the point at which you attain sustainability.
Thank you, Chief Penn. Are there further questions or comments?
Chief Penn, I think
I
you
have a
answered
comment.
sorry, I just wanted to say, Chief Penn, you answered the question also around what happens with regard to process, and you talked about the committee as well.
Okay. Did Chairwoman Board Member Brody have a question or comment?
I have a question as to the timing of it and why when there needs to be follow-up and there's more questions, like, it seems like rushed?
Yes.
Was it poor planning? It seems to be happening more often. And we've asked for this for years, not to be the case, but it seems to be reoccurring.
I would, I would note that. Is there a comment from Chief Penn or Superintendent?
I actually have a clarifying question with regard to poor planning. No, not poor planning. We have a surplus, and we wanted to make sure that we were addressing the needs accordingly and in developing as we go along based on feedback that has been given. We have another follow-up meeting today with the foundation. I think last time we got together in the committee of the whole, I explained that we would be meeting with the foundation and they would develop a proposal. That has been the case. And we have our follow-up meeting today. With regard to having done this year, we've not been in a position financially ever, certainly during my tenure, to invest in this way.
We've been in this position, though, that there is a surplus and planning for the surplus. And in regards to poor planning, I'm asking through you, Mr. Chair, we are, whenever there's a need for you to, in committee, you need to have another meeting with the outside entity where we have a meeting coming up, then we're going to get a one-pager. To me, that seems rushed. Maybe not to everyone else, but it seems rushed. And my follow-up question would be in regards to, I thought that there was an agreement, maybe not on, not on these type of funds, that the city would allow us when we have it planned out for it not to go into capital improvement. I thought we worked that out with the mayor.
No, sorry, Mr. Walker, go ahead.
No, please. Superintendent.
If the money ends up going back to the city, if the year ends, then we would have to request from the city council, actually. And we're not in the position to do that yet. We've not returned the funds. Chief Penn, I don't know if you want to add any additional clarification.
No, I mean, we're basically been working on this for what, Jesse, 2 months now, something like that, trying to pull this all together. If the money doesn't get spent before June 30th, then that's fine. It just goes back into the overall general fund surplus.
So,
Chairman Walker, clarifying, because my question wasn't answered.
okay.
In previous years, we were facing a surplus. And it was my understanding from the superintendent that as long as we identified and there was an earmark, like we knew what we were going to use the funds with, there was an agreement from the mayor that we would be allowed to do it, not to lose the funds. That was a clear understanding on my part. I don't know how many board members were a part of the board then. Is that still not an agreement with the mayor?
The only agreement that I recall is with regard to the non-lapsing account. I don't know if any other agreement that has been made. And it's not a written agreement. It was the vote that the council took.
So to let me ask him, I guess, put clarification on her question. So what indicates that the money has been planfully is going to be planfully used by the school district? Are we saying here in this meeting that, in essence, the indicator that this money will be planfully used is the vote by the full board? So anything short of a vote by the full board is not an indication of planful use? Because what Chief Penn is saying, I just want to clarify. What I'm trying to clarify to answer a question is there's an action that we will take as a board that indicates the money will be planfully used. So I just want to put on the record that what I'm understanding here is that a vote by the full board is that trigger, that indication of the plan for use of the money that would then prevent the money from going back to general fund. Is that correct? Is that how we see things?
That's correct. That's the way I see things. I need some kind of concrete proof that it's the board's intent to spend the money in this way.
Okay, then I want to connect. I think the other point is, and this is, it's aligned with finance, but outside of this meeting, this is more to Chief Penn, that my expectation will be helpful here. You have an annualized planning process, correct? And so my sense is by the early part of the year, by January, February, March, you, as you said, you spent 2 months or more pulling this plan together, that potentially bringing the board along at a preliminary step that in essence would provide a little more time for the board to understand what your ideas are, may give the board at a committee level more time to think about and review some of these ideas. At this point, it's a one and done. It goes to a committee one time, they get one time to look at it, they get one time to review it. And by the time we get to the next cycle of meetings, we'll be beyond June 30th. So my only recommendation would be maybe at a future time to let's look at a way, and it's outside of this meeting, where we can align with your planning process, Chief Penn. Is there a point where you know you can get an excess? Is there a point earlier in the year before May?
Not typically.
Okay. So in that case, we'll have to talk about then how to augment our meeting and stuff to align with that compressed period. Okay, so are there further questions or comments? If not, I think I would say that the decision, as I've talked to board members, would be to approve this plan going forward to the full board. I think we are aligned on the use of these monies to encourage and support both attendance and student achievement. That being said, this is the finance committee, so I think this is a good use of the money, which is why the finance committee is going to approve this going forward. I would really encourage Ms. Sugarman and the folks on the program side of this to return to the Family and Community Engagement Committee level post this being approved to work out some of the logistics of this program moving forward. I think there are issues that came up at the Family and Community Engagement Committee that it's not appropriate to talk about here, but I think would be helpful, even after this program is approved, to make sure that this program is really well integrated with other initiatives that we're doing to encourage attendance, to encourage student achievement, so that we maximize this program and maximize its reach, maximize its potential to motivate the maximum number of students to be engaged in the educational process. That's be my comment post this program being approved by the board. If there aren't any other comments, I'd suggest moving forward to the next agenda item.
My Chair Walker, my only comment as it relates to the dialogue that just took place, I just want to make sure that we document the current arrangement that we have with the city as it relates to our budget and funding, just so that there's no confusion of how that relationship works.
Yeah, thank you. I will agree with that, Chairman Rigger, and I was trying to, my tortured question was trying to get that at least put on the record, that people at least would have it understood. Here's what really happens and what needs to occur for us to planfully indicate that we're going to use the money. but we can also have that in the meeting minutes as well. So I will make sure that happens. And Christina, let's see here. There are updates on the ESSER and ARP. Is that going to be the next topic, Christina?
Yes, 2.01 return on investment, SRARP.
Okay, and before we dive into this, who's needing to leave and when? Are we encroaching on someone's time here, or are we still on schedule in terms of people needing to leave?
I think we're good. The superintendent is on this next item, and then Dr. Silver has 3.01 and 3.02. And
okay, all
we
right.
should-
Just want to
as
make
long as we
sure.
continue, yeah.
Okay, perfect. So Superintendent, are you taking this next? Thank
Yes,
you.
and thank you for asking, Mr. Walker. I am scheduled to present to principals actually on something related to ARP and ESSER at 9:30. So I'll try. And really what I wanted to get at, and Chief Penn, I'm going to tag you in here as well, is to share our evolving use, one, of ESSER and ARP, but specifically as it relates to the return on investment, knowing that, right, a lot of these investments and strategies were just implemented, this year, later into this school year. And so just to give you an idea of our continuous improvement data, specifically those ESSER funded strategies, and to show how we're using the data in order to maximize the impact moving forward. So we've talked about having an ROI, return on investment lens when we make decisions about resource use, right? And we know that ROI in its traditional sense is being able to make decisions about resource use by really looking at the outcomes of the strategies and the investments that the system has made. And typically that's done 2 to 3 years after implementation. Again, want to double click on that. Typically is done 2 to 3 years after implementation. Those outcomes include the key performance indicators in our strategic plan, and also our, right, the scorecard. In the context of using short-term dollars, right? We can't wait until there's outcome data to reflect on progress and adjust. So we look to implementation and leading indicator data to help inform what is and what isn't working. And we really try to leverage both the quantitative and the qualitative data, and how we might approach our investments differently, right, to maximize impact, and leaning in on the continuous improvement practices. This is just a reminder visual here. As you recall, you might recall from last spring, right? We did align our stimulus funding budget to our strategic operating plan, right? After those 50 hours of engagement and feedback we heard from all stakeholder groups, we focused on our 4 key must-win areas: expanding learning time and targeted supports. That included the tiered system of support for students, increasing support for teachers and leaders, including curriculum, professional learning, and coaching, and making sure that we connected every student to an adult advocate, as well as expanding wellness supports. And that was inclusive of student and family and community partnerships, student re-engagement activities, expansion of our community school models, and mental health supports. And lastly, in the green bucket, you see our focus on cultivating a sustainable teacher pipeline, which includes the hiring, retention, and incentives, and then partnering with our higher education partners and or the third-party organizations to help us expand our pipeline and increase the capacity in the Office of Talent Management. The bucket, the line that goes across in the salmon color there, the equity innovation grants, was just an opportunity for us to see if we can allow our schools to engage in some innovative thinking and design. And we actually are, it's not part of this presentation, but I might as well make the connection that that is the presentation that I will be making to principals this morning, is the scalability of the equity innovation grants, based on the feedback that we've heard from teachers and principals that they wanted to have more autonomy into some of the strategies and innovation. We've leveraged that. And so if I can go to the next slide and ask Chief Penn if you can give an overview of actually, oh, there you go, where we actually are with the spending.
Thanks, Superintendent. I appreciate that. So no great surprise, you've been hearing us talk about the difficulties we've encountered bringing in new personnel into the district pretty much the whole year long. And that's obviously impacted our ability to spend down the ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 money. To date, we've spent about 29% through our personnel investments that we anticipated making. Non-personnel, we've done better at about 60% expended of what the original plan was. Some of the things that you'll note here, and the footnote is important because the measurement date that we used for this was May 18th. We've had about $2 million more come through in the end of May after the 18th to get us up to about 25 or 26 million expended. And a big piece of what came in toward later in the month was technology related. And I should point out that technology related expenditures, we also had a very significant level of that in ESSER 1. The slide only covers ESSER 2 and ESSER 3, but we spent about $6 or $7 million on technology investments in the ESSER 1 budget. And of course, we're trying to spend as much as we can in ESSER 1 before that grant closes out this September. But you'll see some of the other things that are more timing differences. As a, for instance, we're going to have retention bonuses that get paid in the 22-23 school year. That'll affect that bucket. Health and safety, we've ordered what we think is an adequate supply of all the safety gear that we would have needed. Obviously, the pandemic shifted a bit after these plans were initially put together. But there are cause for reshifting some of our investments going forward, as out of about 45 million, 47 million that we initially had planned for the 21-22 school year for ESSER investments, we're going to have about 20 million of that left on the table. So we're going to be realigning some of those things going forward. If we could flip to the next slide for a second, one of the things that I've heard anecdotally through other CFOs in large urban districts, through one of the networks that I belong to, Mr. Sugarman had actually captured some of this data from some of the networks that he participates through. We're not unique in this respect in terms of the spending and the inability to get stuff spent as quickly as we would have liked. Just about every district that we've talked to, particularly the larger urban ones, is struggling from a personnel perspective to find people adequate for what their plans represented. So one of the things that we're going to be a bit more careful about going forward is, to the extent that we shift around these plans, is trying to ensure that it's not as staff dependent as the initial budgets were. There's still concerns out there that the job market has not meaningfully changed in the past year. If anything, it may have gotten slightly more challenging. And so even with all the good work that OTM has been doing over the past several months to line up incentives, retention, things along those lines, we know that getting more staff will remain a challenge. And we're trying to make sure that we don't fall into the same trap twice of making plans that are overly dependent on our ability to bring in new staff. And we can go to the next slide. Superintendent, I think it's back to you.
Thank you. So we're working on gathering more detailed information on the major investment areas, including a summary of implementation and leading indicator data and progress, and also evolutions that we're planning for next year. So we can, I guess this is a point of this clarification, Mr. Walker, we can either send a follow-up presentation with appended information or present at one of the committee of the whole. This is also for you, Mr. Rigger, Chairman Rigger, committee of the whole meetings in the summer, right? When we kind of end the year and put all of these thoughts and data together. But for our time today, I just wanted to share with you some of the major highlights, both successes and even the challenges of our most major strategic investments, and how we're thinking of approaching, for next year to maximize our impact. Despite, spending less than what we had wanted, our continuous improvement data have surfaced some wins across our major strategic investments this year. And you'll see these on the slide here, right? So right, both our school leaders and district staff have indicated growth and interim assessment data in schools where the multi-tiered system of support is fully staffed and the teams are meeting regularly to review student data and impact instructional practice. With regard to, mental health clinicians have helped students stay engaged and ready to learn, particularly in middle schools where there are systems in place to identify students that have a higher level of need. We've gotten feedback from teachers and students who attended intercession that it was, incredibly positive, that feedback, and there's evidence of growth in targeted standards for those specific students that attended regularly. And, our recruiters, our talent recruiters have shared positive impact of the use of those recruitment bonuses for those hard to staff positions. So we have some positive feedback and implementation outcome data. Next slide is the opposite of that, which are some of the challenges that we're facing. Most notably, as we all have heard, is the hiring challenges, particularly teachers and paraeducators. Is certainly impeded our some of our investment strategies in ESSER, like class size reductions. We know that we wanted to have class sizes in lower grades and also in 9th and 10th grade. And it impacted also the investment in our resource teachers to support with those tiered supports. And it did put a significant strain on schools to implement high quality instruction and student wellness and mental health needs, right? Because you've heard it, we've heard it from teachers, staff, administrators. The impact, right? The shortage of staff has led to folks being and feeling overworked. And some of the staffing investments were deliberately targeted to our higher need schools because there were, and since there were some of the greatest areas of underspend, obviously because of the shortages, it meant that our ESSER resources really didn't play out as equitably as we wanted to. And many of those schools suffered the highest vacancy rates in core teaching positions as well, which then, right, it's a cycle. It exacerbated their challenges in meeting the students' needs. Lastly, attendance. Attendance has been a major challenge this year. Chronic absenteeism rose sharply here in the district, in Connecticut, across the country. And that's after major strides that we had made in Hartford Public Schools. And in some of our extended day initiatives, specifically funded through ESSER, we saw that attendance was lower than we expected and also inconsistent. And it is, unfortunate, especially as you look at the impact that these programs are having on the students who were attending regularly. We heard from students and staff as to the positives. So in the next slide, as our leadership, reflected and continues to reflect on our spending, the challenges that we faced and the successes that we've had in these major strategic areas, we've reflected also on the feedback that we've collected from our school leaders, our central office teams, and a few key implications for change have come up. So I'll kind of give an overview of those. So we want to explore ways to increase that school level agency that I was talking about for how to organize resources to address their unique challenges. This includes exploring expansions to flexible school-based funds that will accelerate spending that happens directly in schools in ways that reach students with the greatest needs, again, to get at that equity of resource use. We also think this is a great way to be testing for different ways of organizing resources, including ways to mitigate the impact of the vacancies and improve the teaching job. And related to that, on a second note, we want to think about ways to use the short-term resources to increase pay in strategic and short-term ways, right? By increasing, at least while we have the dollars, pay rates, stipend opportunities, tuition and certification reimbursements to reduce barriers to entry for teachers, and also recognize the hard work that teachers and others are doing already to support our students. And then third, targeting resources toward increasing student attendance, right? If they're not here, our students are not going to learn. And we want to make sure that we increase student attendance during the school day, but also in the extended day opportunities that we know have shown great promise. And lastly, knowing that our staffing shortages are likely not to resolve overnight, we want to explore how to invest in non-position resources in ways that accelerate our strategic plan priorities and support our long-term sustainability by buying down future spend. So some of the investments that we might consider, things like expanding our athletic programming, the equipment and facility upgrades that we can focus on and purchase now, right? This would directly support our strategies for student engagement, respond to some of the feedback that we've received about what attracts and keeps students in Hartford, which also, by the way, unintendedly, but in a positive way, might help to address another one of our biggest financial sustainability challenges, which relates to the regional choice system, right? And our quest to get students into the district and keep them in the district. I know that I've said a lot in terms of sharing the thinking around ROI as with a new definition, right, of ROI, given the short time frame that we have with the funding.
Thank you, Superintendent. That was a lot of information. I think you posed a question as to whether or not we'd want to hear about this more at a committee level or to what proceed with the information as is. Could you restate the question?
Yes, right. So we're looking at additional data, Mr. Walker, for each of the investment areas, right? What worked, what didn't, what were the promising, outcomes. So I'd like to kind of do a double take on that. It could be that that we compile a PowerPoint or append this specific PowerPoint and send it to you all, and or spend some time in the committee of the whole. I assume that our committee of the whole agendas over the summer might be a little packed. I'm open for suggestions either way. It could be that I do both, that I send the PowerPoint and then questions come up, just throwing it back to you as a board to help guide.
I agree. I mean, I think it would be to me, the committee of the whole reviewing it would be probably most benefit and helpful. I mean, Chairman Rigger or Chairman Rigger can talk about the agenda because there's probably more things to discuss than time, but I'm gonna I guess I'm saying I'm erring on the side of partnership, which says that take a little more time, a little deeper understanding probably is going to be beneficial, unless there's a deadline or some opinion deadline. Other than that, I would say I'd be even willing to maybe have what I would call a separate or dedicated meeting just on like a topic like this, where one could just talk about it, understand it. This is a pretty meaty topic. Chairman Rigger, do you have any opinion about adding this to the agenda or not?
Yeah, so I'm still working with Christina and the superintendent. This is clearly one of the topics that has made its way to the top of the list. How the amount of time that will be allocated is still to be determined, but clearly ESSER is very much top of mind for all school districts. So it will be an agenda item.
sorry, I was muted. Thank you, Chairman Briger. And so the superintendent, I then welcome you to feel free to bring the additional information. And for me personally, I think because it's multi-year, that's why I think discussion would be useful, because my sense is that as you move forward in time, you're beginning to create and percolate up different plans of how spending may happen in the future and things like that, that you can't present here, that maybe in a discussion at a committee level would be fruitful and beneficial to talk about. If there aren't any other questions on that topic, I was going to move forward, but let me give the floor over to Christina, because I believe we're going to have a slight modification in the agenda.
Yes, committee, I hope you bear with us as we are grappling with the principals meeting that is starting right now. If you don't mind, I'm going to move Achievement Network, ANET, up for Chief Avila to be able to quickly present, and then she can attend the principals meeting. And we did, just so we know, the Achievement Network was presented and vetted through the Teaching and Learning Committee. So as you see, these are the financials, the dollar amount, and the budget source. So turn it over to Chief Avila and Chief Penn, if there are any questions.
Good morning, everyone. If I may, I'd like to just give a quick summary of ANET. We did have an opportunity to talk about it in the Teaching and Learning. And this year, ANET supported us in several ways. They supported us in one, working with our coaches, working with our district leaders, and working with our curriculum in regard to our ELA curriculum, and then working in preparation for preparing to embark in a new math curriculum this year as well. And doing that, so as we think about next year, what we would need support for is to continue the work with our school leaders. They receive coaching with their instructional teams at the school level with ANET coaches, as well as to continue the work with our coaches to deepen their understanding to support the schools at their level, and then additionally to also support our transition into a new math curriculum that will be adopted this year. And we'll continue the work for the ELA curriculum, evaluating the current instructional materials, supplementing it, and then being ready to support the work in the following year in regard to the ELA. So I quickly summarized. I don't know if there are any particular questions or if there's, if you'd like me to go into a little deeper. The amount is a total of $1,370,000.
Yeah, is it clear exactly how that money's going to be spent? Did I miss that, or?
Chairman Walker, you are asking for a breakdown for each of those pieces, meaning what's going in regard to the components, because I can tell you the components. The components is one with instructional materials implementation of phase 1 of math, which is really supporting us to support the implementation of the math curriculum, which means that ANET system coaches will work with district leaders to develop and execute a curriculum implementation plan, which they are presently working on. The areas of focus will guide the partnership with the planning, the progress monitoring of the North Star of that system engagement, and really implementing the district's math curriculum team to advance the progress, so that we implement with fidelity and implement it in a way that supports all of our students in our district and the staff and the teaching staff. The second piece is instructional evaluation and selection in regard to ELA, where the ANET system coaches will support district leaders in conveying a cross-functional team really to set a vision for equitable instruction and really identifying the most essential needs for the materials that need to be addressed. And the ultimate goal in that engagement is to have high quality curriculum and development of a strong plan for communication implementation of ELA the following year. So we're getting ready to begin to adopt the new ELA curriculum as well. And then there is a professional learning series that will happen, and that is with our system coaches, right? Which is our instructional coaches that go into all of our schools that really support the teachers in implementing quality of instruction, and that there will be a series of professional learning for them to build their capacity to do the work with our classroom teachers and the instructional teams as well. And then the last part of it is the school partnerships, where they are working with the principals directly and the instructional teams, and they conduct professional learning for them as well. They walk around into classrooms and help us align our instructional vision with ongoing site visits and developing the capacity of our instructional teams to implement quality of instruction.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chief Avila. It's good. Just bear with me like 1-2 more questions, but
Sure.
one thing, so that $1.3 million, if I scroll back up, are we paying more or less for consulting services, or are we paying more for the development of this? This is a new kind of software tool that will be used for math instruction, right?
No, so we are paying mostly for consultant services and the development. So they're doing a couple of things. The new curriculum is they're assessing. Initially, what they did this year is they assessed our curriculum to see where we needed to improve in areas to make sure that we have high quality curriculum for our students. So out of that evaluation that was conducted, and that evaluation was conducted in a collaborative effort with our content directors and Dr. Negron, as well as the instructional coaches that work in the academic office. In that evaluation, it was determined that we needed a different curriculum for grades 6 through 12. It's not the entire grade level, but primarily focusing on 6 through 12. So they helped us through that process, and now they're going to support in making sure that we implement effectively and with fidelity this year. And so by doing that, we have to build the capacity of all of our teachers, all of our coaches, and all of our school leaders in order for it to happen with fidelity, so that we ensure high quality instruction in math for all of our 6 through 12 grade students.
Okay. So not to dominate here, seeing some comments. So let me open the floor for questions or comments. So I'm seeing it. Okay, so yeah, let me open the floor for comments. I'm seeing one already. So Chief Penn, would you want to elaborate? Can we go back to a gallery view for a minute? Chief Penn, did you want to just elaborate for a second? You're saying there is a proposal document that has the financial breakdown details?
That's correct. I saw Mrs. Brody's comment in the chat, and
Yes.
in the agenda item, it's actually labeled T&L Committee, ANET, Hartford Public Schools, ANET Partnership Proposal. In that document is a pretty detailed breakdown toward the end of it, of the components of the cost.
Is that the document that's included in the presentation packet?
It's one of the 2 documents attached to the agenda item.
Okay, just give me. Okay, got you. Yep, I see it.
And the very final page of that document's got the cost breakdown.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Board Member Brody.
For our listening audience, is it an issue to just say the number, the number that's associated with each of those items?
Could you, Chair, Board Member Brody, could you repeat the question? I just want to hear you clearly.
Is that better?
Yes.
Is there an issue with just associating a number with each item for our listening audience?
Oh, okay.
Not to send them to a document?
And
And is this document is this document available to them?
well,
It's public on board docs right now. That's where I just pulled it from.
Okay, but is it a huge issue with just saying this amount of money is going to this one, this amount of money is going to that one?
Why don't I just have Christina let me share the screen? That might be easier.
yeah, that's what I was going to suggest. It would answer the question maybe. Okay. So,
Oh, actually, this is Christina sharing the screen. I just realized. Okay, so the breakdowns are instructional materials, the implementation and the evaluation, a total of 121,000. It's the school-based supports that drive the majority of this, 861,000 for the K-8 schools. 11 high schools drives about another 400,000 for a total of 1.26 million. Professional learning adds about 40,000 more as a credit from the 21-22, the current school year scope of work for 55,000. And that's how you get down to the net amount of the 1.37 million.
okay, thank you, Chairman. Chief Penn, thank you. So there are questions and comments on the are there further questions or comments? Then we can stay on that page. I'm just going to say that school-based supports that $1.264 million. If you ask me my opinion, looking at the numbers, I would have some higher comfort if there was a way that I could get feedback from instructional staff level folks that they see this as being money well spent. One of the things we get poked at is the amount of consultant dollars spent, and essentially this looks to be like $1.2 million that's going to be spent working with teachers. If that's how I'm looking at it, that's what it feels like. That much money is going to be spent on instructional staff level people. I don't know if it's coaches, teachers, or others. Is that correct, Chief Avila?
So Chairman Walker, we did survey the school leaders, and this is a direct support to the instructional teams and the school leaders at each building. It consists of 15 days for each of our 39 schools where there's an on-site visit to support the instructional teams. Instructional teams consist of instructional coaches and teachers and administration. So each school has an instructional team that consists of it varies. I would just say anywhere from 5 to 10 people, depending on the school. And it consists of a combination of people at the school that support the instructional practices at each school. So that is part of what's happening there. And yes, we did give a survey that did share the fact that they do find that the support is beneficial and that they would want the support to continue.
So if I may, then Chief Avila, can you provide that be outside this meeting, that type of feedback? If you did a survey and got some actual results, that would be actually helpful to include this as an addendum to this discussion.
So
Right.
Chairman Walker, we did discuss it at the teaching and learning. Didn't know that it was needed here as well, and we'll be prepared for it at the board meeting, but yes, I'll be happy.
Yeah, I would, only because even though this is just a financial decision, the issue is that sometimes we're approving some kind of spend that then people question, why did you approve it? And so having in my hand, hey, because you said that you wanted it or you thought it'd be helpful, would be good for me to have as backup as to why this would be proposed for approval. If
No
that makes
problem.
sense.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm getting a time check question. So I'm going to yield the floor to anyone else who has a question. And I think my one action is I think Chief Avila has. So I don't have further comments on this particular issue. Any other questions? Is there hands up? Okay, if there aren't further questions, then let's move forward. I know we're running short on time. So Christina, if you can take us back to the agenda and let us know. I think this is the Chief Silvers.
Yes, well, with Power School and Qualtrics are Chief Silvers, who have, these two are for this committee.
Okay.
The rest of the items have been vetted through the Teaching and Learning Committee, but so I think these are more urgent.
Okay.
So Dr. Silver.
Thank you and good morning, everyone. This morning we have our Power School contract, and Power School, as you can see from this summary information, it does include a wide number of tools. We have the student registration and enrollment system. So we register all of our students in this platform. They are enrolled in our schools through this platform. It manages our student information system with cloud hosting. I don't know if you remember a couple of years ago with the malware attack, we did need to transition to cloud hosting. And that is an extra layer of security that we have now with Power School, so that our system will be maintained and available to us at all times. The program also, Power School, includes Performance Matters, which covers our student assessment and analytics components. We have a special programs intervention system, our MTSS tool for monitoring academic progress that's also included in this Power School umbrella, and the Naviance system, which helps us prepare for college and career readiness through our shared experiences and our student success planning. So our dollar amount this year is $519,092.63. And the tool supports all of our priorities and our departments and our schools and every student.
Thank you, Chief Silver. Are there questions on this particular topic? If there aren't questions, I'm comfortable moving this particular contract extension to the full board for their review and approval. The Qualtrics, Chief Silver.
Thank you so much. Yes, Qualtrics is our survey tool that we've had in place since the spring of 2021. And we have conducted many surveys regarding our culture and climate in our schools, as well as enrollment for summer programs, health. There's some health information that we have collected as well. And the Qualtrics platform is flexible, and we were able to replace our historical once a year survey platform that we were using for many years with this platform. We did conduct this year 3 separate distinct climate surveys. That is some of the flexibility that we've had, and this really helps us stay on track with a pulse check for the culture and climate in our schools by conducting these surveys 3 times a year. We survey our students, we survey our staff, we also survey our families. This contract, in addition to the survey tool that we're using, this contract also expands this to an employee engagement and experience module that Dr. Curtis in the Office of Talent Management is expanding to. And we will be partnering the expertise that we have in Qualtrics to support the Office of Talent Management's adoption of this tool, which will survey our staff on their employee experience and likelihood to leave. And this is a contract that certainly speaks to our staff retention and recruitment efforts that we are engaged in. So Qualtrics does serve academics, family and community engagement, welcoming culture and nurturing climate, as well as skillful staff and operations. So with that, I conclude my overview of the tool.
Thank you, Chief. Silver, any questions on the Qualtrics contract continuation? I don't see any at the moment, and I agree that this contract continuation should be brought forward to the full board for review and approval. I think, yeah, you certainly need to continue your survey tool efforts. And I think this is your tool of choice to do surveying across the district. So thank you for that presentation, Chief Silver.
Chairman Walker?
Yes.
If you don't mind, I'm going to move summer contracts next. This was also vetted at the Family and Community Engagement Committee meeting. Chief Blackbrook does have a 10 a.m. meeting, so.
I agree, and apologies for those who may need to jump off. I see some people are needing to jump off at 10 o'clock meetings, so we'll try to move quickly through these last several items.
Okay, so Chief Blackbrook.
Thank you, Ms. Santiago, and thank you, Chairman Walker, and to all the board members. So wanted to present our summer contracts. As you know, we do offer summer programming for our students, beginning with an academic component in the morning and looking to give them a full summer experience by adding enrichment in the afternoon that does include experiences such as field trips, movement, the arts. So we put out a proposal that was opened up on March 28th to the our community partners, that closed on April 11th. So they had an opportunity of 2 weeks to apply through the RFP process using the city's procurement on Planet Bids. We did receive 12 applications. One was received after the time frame, and it was actually hand delivered, and the RFP stated that it would not be honored. So the proposals that we are bringing before you this morning are proposals that, due to the dollar amount threshold, does need to come to the full board for approval. In the backup, because I know we're short on time, it does state that we'll be looking at attendance, as well as this year, for the first time, we will be offering a survey at the beginning of programming and also at the end of programming to our students to really hear from them what they feel work best in the program and how they're responding to the overall summer experience that we are looking to provide for them. So this does work in collaboration with our academic program, that if there is a complement on the back end of the day, we are hoping to see attendance really boost for students who are attending the academic component in the beginning of the day. So the dollar amounts are here for each of our CBO providers. And during the X&E committee meeting, I know Chairman Rigger really wanted to understand what enrichment meant, but for us, it's a summer experience for the students that we will be giving them, including field trips, just awareness, leading to some of those pathways that were discussed earlier. So those are the contracts to be presented, looking for complete approval. So we'll be able to start summer programming right on time on July 5th. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Blackbrook. That Thank you. That was comprehensive and quick. Are there questions about program funding or details? I'm gonna look for.
And Chairman Walker,
Yes.
just to note, and I did say this at FCE, if you could scroll up, Ms. Santiago, Catholic Charities is here at 4888. That's what they applied for, but because they have an existing contract with the district, it does bring them over that 50,000. So we do need to bring that to the full board.
Okay, okay.
Thank you.
Chairman Rigger.
Yeah, Chief Blackburn, you alluded to this. So are we thinking about kind of rebranding the program in terms of its name, or are we still calling it enrichment?
Thank you, Chairman Rigger. So yes, we've been using the term summer experience for a few years. I did fail to mention that because I didn't use the slides during our FCE committee. But if you go back to the prior meeting back in May, you'll see that it does have summer experience to it, but that's what we've been calling it, is the summer experience. So
Perfect.
Thank you for highlighting that. That's what we want our students to leave with.
Thank you.
So thank you, Chief Blackburn, for that response. And it appears Chairman Rigger is satisfied. So if there aren't other questions, I would agree that this program and its funding is ready for full board review. So let's push this to the next board meeting. And thank you, Chief Blackburn, for your presentation and for shepherding
Thank you,
this, 'cause
everyone.
it's been a bit of a effort. So we have a couple more items and a couple of minutes. So
Thank you, Chairman Walker. We have Dr. Daniels on the line for the following: the Effective School Solutions, Ready CT, and RISE, which were also all vetted through the Teaching and Learning Committee.
okay, for sake of is Dr. Daniels going to go through all three of them? Can you do all three of them kind of sequentially so we can hear all of them at the same time?
Dr. Daniels? Oh, okay.
I'm sorry, can you just repeat that request? You want all?
Essentially, can you just go through 3.04, 05, 06, just if you can go through all three of them, and then we can comment on the three of them, I think, as a group.
Okay, because Jen Hoffman is going to be talking about one of those items. The two that I'm going to be working towards is specifically the Ready CT and RISE.
And that's
So
fine. So,
go ahead.
okay, so did you want to have Jen lead off? Is that what you're suggesting?
Jen, if you'd like to go in order, Jen would be next in line with the Effective School Solutions.
Yeah, I'd
Okay.
be perfectly happy with that. And so we can,
Absolutely. Jen, all you?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jen Hoffman, Senior Executive Director for Special Education. I am joined with Amy Barrett and Duncan Young from ESS. This contract proposal was presented to the Teaching and Learning Committee for continuation for the 22-23 school year. We, just as a quick overview, we are looking to continue the contract. And the one major change would be to add 2 additional clinicians to the contract to support us through next year. The clinicians that are in place right now are in 6 schools and support students with high levels of need in areas of behavioral health and mental health as well.
okay. Was there more to say on that, or is that?
That's just a really high, I like, and think in the interest of time, that's a very high.
That's
overview.
fine. I'm okay with that in this situation because these are continuations. So they're unless there's a scope change, I think we know what the programs are. So Dr. Daniel, would you then continue with 3.05 and 3.06?
Absolutely. Thank you, Chairman Walker. So the first one that I'm going to speak on is the Ready CT component. As you guys are aware, we have a current contract in place to do the work of supporting our comprehensive high schools with the academies. We currently have multiple academies within our school setting. There are a total of 6, and we are looking to add the complementary academy to Weaver High School, journalism and media, based on current data in regards to need. And so we are asking within our space here is that we extend the existing contract to include the journalism and media pathway for June through July, the 22-23 school year. We intend to hire a career pathways program manager for Weaver that will begin the work of onboarding the career pathway programs, setting up the industry advisory boards with local businesses in Hartford and in the Hartford County, and developing the course sequencing that will prepare our students for college and career. So that is the Ready CT contract. Again, currently it exists right now among 6 pathways. 3 of those pathways are Model Distinguished Academies with opportunities that come from the program management in collaboration with administration to create work-based learning experiences while also creating opportunities for dual enrollment.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Daniels. It's ESS. You went through Ready and Rise, Dr. Daniels. I did.
Okay, I will do Rise next.
Yes.
I just want to make sure there are no additional questions. It doesn't seem like there are. Okay, so for the Rise network in particular, we currently have a contract in place as well to support the work of preparing students for being on track to graduation. We've seen success with the implementation of this contract and therefore would like to extend our work to capture our 9th grade repeating students and continue the ongoing professional learning with our freshman academy teams. The Ready CT, CT Rise, essentially would be moving forward with designing a community practice sessions with myself, using the CT Rise dashboard data to ensure that our students are on track, both at the 9th grade and those who may have repeated the 9th grade. And then we would be continuing and establishing ongoing metrics of performance for monitoring student on-track success. So that is what the CT Rise contract entails.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Daniels. So I'm seeing some back and forth here. I will say that we've gone through 3.04 to 3.0506 rather briefly. So the detailed presentation materials in the board docs. And so my expectation is that people have the ability to look at the detailed information before the meeting or to look at the detailed information as we're going through the meeting. And also this particular information has already gone through teaching and learning. And so the programmatic details and its value and its alignment with our overall teaching and learning goals has already been assessed. Here, we're looking at the budgetary numbers. From my perspective, the budgetary numbers don't look out of line with previous activities, previous work in these areas. So, there's no need to second guess. So in some ways, I know we went through it quickly, but it's so that we can put the numbers out there and the program and assess its value. So that being said, are there any questions about these programs from a budgetary standpoint or from a financial standpoint, as a sustainability standpoint? I'm not seeing any at the moment. So yes, is there a question? So if there isn't, then I'm comfortable, Chairman of the Finance and Audit Committee, to propose 3.04, 3.05, 3.06, that they each be elevated to the full board for voting at the next school board meeting. I did see the suggestion about putting these onto the business agenda. That's something we can discuss before the full school board meeting, so I won't get into that here. So I'm comfortable with those three moving forward. And I appreciate the presentations by Dr. Daniels and by Jennifer. I didn't get her last name.
Hoffman.
Hoffman, I'm sorry. Because it's always challenging when you're at the tail end of the meeting and you don't get quite the airtime that others got. And we realize the work you've done is significant and important, and there are significant students that are served through RISE and through SPED and through other initiatives. And so I don't want to give any indication that we don't appreciate the efforts of these programs. It's just that we're not talking about the program values here, just can we fund it? And so I'd say, yes, let's fund these because I think their value is understood within the district. So Christina, are there further issues? Because the reports we certainly can push off to not to a further meeting, but people can look at the reports and on their own.
Yes, and they can send me any questions they have.
Correct. And the same thing here. I think if people come up with questions, certainly everyone is reachable, and I would try to be responsive to give any feedback that folks may have about a particular program detail. Chairman Rieger?
Yeah, I just have a comment to make before we close, but I'll let you finish.
Well, I'm finished my comments. I was going to adjourn the meeting, so I'll let you have the final comment here.
Yes, thank you. And I appreciate everyone's time and willingness to stay over here. I do want to clarify just one thing as regards to the surplus. Just for the record, it was communicated to the board that we would have a potential surplus due to workforce challenges, I believe as early as February, late February, early March. And I also know that the surplus amounts have been communicated to all board members, I would say over the past 3 to 4 months. So I just want to make sure that that we're very mindful of how we communicate expectations of what we want. And to be quite honest, I'll just flat out say, I don't think that the administration was unprepared. There were other items that we prioritized ahead of the early promise initiative that was brought to committee. But the surplus was communicated months ago. And again, I just want to make sure that that's on the record.
Thank you, Chairman Rieger. So with that, thank you for staying with us a bit over to cover this important business of the Finance and Audit Committee. And with that, I will say the meeting is adjourned, and thank you until next month.